Now, when it comes to running your webinar, you have to have a good structure to it. You have to have a logical flow. If you do not have a structure and you're just sort of winging it, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to present the information in a way that is easy for your readers to understand. You have to make sure that you have the structure and you take them through from A to B to C to D and so on. If you don't, it's going to be difficult. And the last thing you want is for people to be sitting there scratching their head thinking, well, you missed something, I don't understand this. You want to take them through step by step. What I recommend is that you plan out your program and you print it out. Have it written out or printed out next to you so that you can tick things off and work through it as you're running your webinar. You don't want to have it on your screen, because if they're looking at your screen, you don't want to have to be sort of switching windows so that people can see what's going on. What I do is, if I was running a webinar, I would list out the main sort of chapters, if you like, that I want to cover, and then sort of the main points within that, and just work my way through it. I could put it on a laptop next to my main computer, or have it printed out. It doesn't matter which, as long as it's there. Now, it's very, very important that you start and finish on time. People have set aside, the time that you've said for your webinar. So if you don't start until, you say you're starting at 7:30, but it's 7:45. You're 15 minutes late. You're going to have annoyed a lot of people already. A lot of them are going to say, well, why we bother turning up? You can't even bother to be here. And typically, if you're not there dead on time or even early, people will leave, and you'll get a lot of people leaving. I've gone on to webinars and telephone conferences where you get there on time and it's just saying the conference isn't open yet. You wait 5 minutes. If it hasn't appeared, you go, you know what, not worth it, and you put the phone down and you go and do something else. So you have to start on time. Finishing on time is also quite important. This is why you need your structure. You need to know how long it's going to last, and this is why you can't really be distracted by questions as you're going through. People, if I'm running my webinar in the USA and I've got some gentleman in India listening in, he's hours ahead of me, so it's the middle of his night, so he might want to get a couple of hours sleep before the morning. So by me waffling on a lot longer, I'm irritating people again. So what I tend to do is say, right, well, I'm running my webinar from 7:30 to 9:30. At 9:30, I will take questions, and I will do an hour of questions. And that way people have the option that, well, 9:30 comes, they go, well, you know what, my TV show's on, or well, I'd really like to get to bed now. And they can go off, and they know that they've not missed the meat of the webinar. All they've done is missed a little discussion, the questions. So they're not going to be too upset by that, if you know what I mean, but they will be if they miss the actual meat. So making sure you start and finish on time is common courtesy. So how do you start? Well, you can make sure that everyone can hear you. One way to do this is to just sort of ask people to put a yes into the box if they can hear you, in the question box, and just get lots of yeses from people. You may want to start talking about yourself, introduce yourself, maybe say hello to people and how are you. Where is everybody today? And just read out some names and locations, because again, it's going to make people feel special and like you're talking to them as individuals. So you get people to type their name and location into the question box, and again you say, oh, there's Jack in Colorado, Johan in Germany, or whatever. You read a few out, and it's going to just sort of help break the ice and relax people and make them feel a little bit special. You want to introduce you. Who are you? Why are you there? Why are you speaking to them as an authority? What qualifies you to be an authority in this structure? If you are interviewing somebody, you may well introduce them and their qualifications and spend more time on them than yourself, because you can assume that they know a little bit about you. So, spend 2 minutes just talking about the rules of the webinar, tell them where the toilets are and the fire exits, that sort of thing. How are you going to handle questions? What's the duration going to be? And so on and so forth. So just, set out the rules. Doesn't have to take a long time. Only need a couple of minutes on that, really. Then give them a little bit of background if it's appropriate. You may want to sort of tell them, well, I'm running this webinar because, and give them some information that lets them understand why it's being run and why it's important that they listen. Once you've done that, you're going to introduce the webinar. What are you going to tell them? Tell them what they're going to learn throughout the webinar. That's the next thing you need to do. So again, this is only going to be a few minutes, 5 minutes at the most. You're going to introduce the webinar, and often the background and the introduction sort of merge into one. It depends upon the subject and sort of how you're presenting it. Then you'd get into the main meat of the webinar. Now this may be half an hour, it may be an hour. It depends upon what you're trying to communicate to them. It's going to be as long as it needs to be long. So you then go into the main meat and you tell them the main content. Try not to get too distracted by questions and go off on tangents. If people ask questions, yay, that's all well and good, but do not allow yourself to get distracted. Take questions where it helps enhance the understanding of the content that you're trying to present. But it's important that your webinar flows logically. It's got to go from A, B, C, D, and so on. If you're going from A to E to F to Z to T to B, people are going to go, huh? So make sure it flows logically. It's just going to help people understand. Remember, this has to be as easy as possible. And by making it flow logically, you're going to build a good relationship. People are going to be happy with what they're seeing, and they're going to feel a lot better about the whole webinar thing. Now, unless your webinar is going to teach them from the ground up, you do have to assume a basic level of knowledge. You've got to assume that they know something. If I'm giving a presentation about how to create a niche blog site, for example, I may well assume that they know how to FTP. I'm not going to sit there and explain that in depth. I may assume that they know how to register a domain name. If you find you get a lot of questions from people saying, but I don't know how to do that, how do you do this? And it's not sort of part of the main content. What you can do is two things. You can either, if it's a large number of people, stop and cover it, or if it's a smaller percentage, you can say, well, look, it's not really in the scope of what we're doing, but if you go to, I'll send an email out to everyone later on with the replay of this. Go to the replay page and you'll find videos that train people to do that. And either record the videos yourself or use other videos that you have in your sort of collection, so that you don't want to distract people. There's nothing worse than being on a training program. I've been on these training programs. I've been on technical training programs, and you got people asking the noddiest of questions, as simple as the questions, and you're sitting there thinking, hang on, how do you not know how to do that? It's fundamental to doing it, but you are going to find people like that. So don't let them distract you, and sort of take it offline, if you like, and away from the webinar. As I said, if 90% of your audience knows how to FTP, don't spend half an hour teaching that 10%, because that 90% going to be bored. Once you've finished, you want to summarize the content. You may want to give them sort of a next steps, an action plan, something like that to get them going. You may want to sort of summarize it in such a way that you say, right, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and so on. If you're selling something, this is sort of where you would also put a call to action in. You'll have very subtly sold the product throughout the webinar, but towards the end, you will sort of be a bit more pushy and tell them, well, if you like this, you'll love my product, and something like that. You'll push them towards the product if you're selling something. You may well, as I said, allow for a question and answer session at the end, and again, that's going to help you to make sales, because people get, but basically people are giving you a chance to overcome their objections, which is invaluable. It really, really is. So, think about that. Have the question and answer session at the end, overcome their objections to buying, and then close with a further call to action and where to go next. And running your webinar like this is going to maximize the effectiveness for your listeners, and of course it's going to maximize the profitability for you. Having the calls to action, having the sort of chance to overcome their objections and then call to action again, it's going to maximize your sales. So, again, dealing with it like this is going to be professional, it's going to look good, people are going to be satisfied. The people who don't understand it, the 10% who don't understand the basics, they'll be pleased because you've addressed their needs by uploading these special training videos for them. The 90% who do know will be pleased because you haven't wasted their time explaining sort of the fundamentals. So, this is a great way of running them, and it's a structure that you can apply to any niche and any webinar, and you'll find it to be very, very effective for you. So that's how you structure your presentation. It's not too difficult, is it? You can do this. So let's move on now to the next video. You know how to structure your presentation, so let's get on and give you some more information about how you can really profit from these webinars.